I want to
Okay.
thank you for coming here. I want to thank you for doing this podcast with me.
My pleasure.
You're by
Lance.
far one of the most interesting guys I know in Tokyo. And
You
I
know a
think
lot of
that's-
interesting guys,
I know.
Lance. I don't know if I deserve that title, but anyway.
And then we have a lot. I know your whole family. That's one thing, and I'm really appreciative of you being able to do this with me. The thing I wanted to say is I thought about how would I speak to you at the very beginning? What would I do? Would I come to you and say, Mr. Pizza or Mr. Domino's? Because that's how you're known more than anything else. I mean, we can start from there. Because at the time when you brought over Domino's Pizza, that was not a big thing in Japan at all.
That's for sure, yeah.
That was not a big thing. And for you to be able to pull that off and to have, was probably one of the biggest money makers they had, the first one overseas, I believe.
The first successful one, yes.
Well, tell me about it. Tell me how that started. How did you get involved with Domino's Pizza in the first place? What made you decide to bring pizza to Japan?
Okay, well, you've just asked for a very long story.
Well, I want a long story. Give it to me.
All right. Well, so I was doing the lumber business and medical device businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they're all businesses with the United States, going back and forth. And nothing to do with my business, but I read this article in either Business Week or Forbes, actually both, about how this guy who did home delivery pizza named Tom Monahan bought the Detroit Tigers for a record $53 million. This is in 1983. And I said, wow, I never heard of this guy. I've never heard of Domino's Pizza, and he can buy a Major League Baseball team for $53 million. So that's amazing. And that day, I was going to have lunch with my father. And my father in the 1950s actually brought Major League Baseball teams to Japan after the war. And the last team he brought over with the Mainichi newspaper at that time was the Detroit Tigers in 1962 with Al Kaline, who was a big star back then. So he says, well, I know the former owner, John Fetzer, if you want to meet him. And my sister was there at that lunch, and she had taken over one of my father's businesses doing frozen pizza and chilled pizza, manufacturing. So there was some interest there. Okay. And I was just interested because of this baseball team. Merle was interested because she's doing pizza. And my father said, well, I knew the former owner. So the conclusion was, when the next time I go to the States, he'll set up a meeting through the former owner, and we'll meet with Tom Monahan. Mm-hmm. I was just curious. And so they said, Tom said to meet him at Tiger Stadium, middle of Detroit. I don't know how it is now, but Tiger Stadium was not a great neighborhood to meet. A little bit of a concern there.
But you didn't know that. You didn't know that.
Oh, once I went there, I knew this was not the right place.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you didn't know it prior to going.
No, I did not actually.
Okay.
And so I was waiting there, and I expected him to come and pick me up with a car. While I was waiting, all of a sudden I saw this helicopter with a Domino's logo mark come and land. And he says, well, I'm going to take you to the head office, which is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I said, wow, this delivery pizza is pretty interesting. I started to get a little bit interested, And we go to the head office, and there's this, he had actually he was a collector of classic cars. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So he showed me his collection at the head office, 400 classic cars. For example, at that time, he had a Bugatti which was worth $15 million. He had a couple of Duesenbergs, $2 million, 400 of these now. And he says, Ernie, I bought all this with the Domino's Pizza business.
Wait, now he's taking you to his garage.
Well, it's part of the head office. He had it at his head office, his collection.
All 400 cars?
Well, not all 400. They wouldn't all fit, but yeah.
But he had, what, like how many cars you see in that?
There's several hundred. It was pretty big. And he had a full-time staff just to maintain that.
All right.
And then he also had a collection of Frank Lloyd Wright artifacts. He's the biggest collector in the world of Frank Lloyd Wright. Right. So he had, Frank Lloyd Wright windows, furniture, all those kind of things, as well as a couple of Frank Lloyd Wright houses around his head office that were reassembled for there. Right. He says, I got all this with the Domino's Pizza business, Ernie. So I said, wow, okay, helicopter, classic cars, Frank Lloyd Wright. And he had a secret island, a private island, and golf course, and he didn't even play golf. He said, I got this private island through Domino's Pizza. And he had also some corporate jets. They all had the Domino's logo mark, and he had a corporate yacht. So I said, this is an interesting business. This sounds really cool. But the biggest thing that attracted me was that I met his management team. So Tom himself was, I think, in his late 40s at that time.
He was that young?
Yeah, but his top management, the average age was like around 27.
Wait, just a minute.
Yeah.
But how old were you at this time?
So I was in my early 30s. And
Yeah,
so whenever I did business, most of the people are always older than me.
Right.
When I went to Domino's head office, they're all younger than me.
you.
Yeah, and the other thing was, as they were growing, and they were really growing rapidly, it seemed like they're partying the whole time. So, boy, this is a cool company to be with. You know, you party and you grow and you're successful, and Tom gets all these things, you know. So it piqued my interest, but particularly the fact that, you know, they're so young.
Mm-hmm.
And as a matter of fact, that year, they opened 1,000 stores, which was a record at that time for most number of stores open in 1 year.
Now, what year was this?
That was in 1983.
1983. Now, were you married already?
Yes, I was.
You already had married, but did you have your first child already too?
No.
No. You didn't have a child.
You know, I actually take that back. It's 1983. I actually got married in 1988, so it was actually before I got married. I was still single.
You got married in 88.
Yeah.
I got married in 86, so I was married 2 years prior to you.
Yeah. So no, I was single. Okay. That's why I could do such a crazy thing, actually.
and this is through an introduction from your father.
Yes.
Because he knew the guy. Okay. He knew
the former owner.
The former,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
He had already sold it?
Yeah. The former owner was a guy by the name of John Fetzer, and he owned like radio stations, TV stations. He was a very wealthy person in Detroit, and that's why he owned the Detroit Tigers. And he didn't want to sell it, but Tom Monaghan was so persistent. At that time, today, $53 million is not a lot, but at that time it was a record amount.
Of course.
Yeah, for a baseball team. And of course, John Fetzer is quite old, so it's okay, sure. So anyway, you know, when Tom Monaghan showed me, you know, all of his, you know, toys, so to speak, and then all of a sudden, you know, I met his management team, and they're all kind of cool and enjoying themselves, and they break the record, 1,000 stores in 1 year, amazing. So I said, I'd like to, you know, do something with this business. And already back then, though, in Japan, McDonald's was a success, Kentucky Fried Chicken was a success.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe Domino's could be a success. Well, I came back to Japan, and you know, it was going to be a little bit of an investment for me. So I thought I'd do some market research. Okay. And I found out there were a couple pizza chains that are already here in Japan, and none of them were successful.
Who were they?
It was Shakey's and Pizza Hut.
Shakey's had been here for a long time.
Yeah.
Pizza Hut?
Was also here.
It was here, yes.
Yeah, just to give you an idea. So Shakey's was being done by Mitsubishi and Kirin Beer, you know, two very large companies.
Yeah.
Pizza Hut was Sumitomo Shoji and Asahi Beer, they're affiliate companies. And they were not doing so well. And there's actually one other company called Pizza Inn, which is done by Itoman, which is a mid-size Sogo Shosha. And so the common wisdom then was that hamburgers, you know, could be successful, and chicken obviously was, but pizza was not. And you know, so I was a little bit disappointed, because I thought, you know, it'd be cool to tag with these guys. I saw all of these things, and you know, I wanted to be a part of it and so on. But all of a sudden, you know, in Japan, pizza was, you know, really not a thing.
But your sister had kind of gotten into the door too by.
But pizza was perceived as a snack. So she's selling a snack, these small frozen pizzas, like coffee shops.
And she had the little ovens that you could do them.
Yes, so it was a little bit pioneering at that time, but it was not certainly mainstream.
Right. Okay.
And I remember talking to her about it, because she obviously knew about the pizza market. So, well, it's going to be tough to make a store just dedicated to pizza, you know, and make it work. You know, she did the calculation. Fortunately, I wasn't so good at the calculation, you know, because I was thinking about all these things in Ann Arbor. Yeah, you know. So, you know, she said, I don't know, Ernie. That's, you know, because that's a lot of pizzas to sell.
You, right?
Well, she wasn't discouraged.
She was trying to be very cautious.
Give me a reality check on this thing, you know, because obviously, I was hyped up about, you know, all that I saw in Ann Arbor. But then, you know, when in this market research, I said, well, the thing is that Japanese people just don't like pizza. They don't like the taste. So that's kind of like a downer, right? If they don't like the taste. I said, well, you know, what is the research behind that? And they actually have statistics. The average per capita consumption of natural cheese in Japan on an annual basis was less than 1 kilogram. And if you don't like natural cheese, you don't like pizza. In the US, it's like around 11, 12 kilograms. So that shows the difference. In some places in Europe, it's like 21 kilograms. And so actually in Asia in general, cheese was not a big thing.
Dairy products, right?
Yeah. So that was one thing. And they also said, well, even then, it's interesting. Today, Italian food is like everywhere. But Italian food was not very popular then. It said, tomato sauce, it tastes a little kind of sour. And so that was, that's the reason why, the existing chains were not successful. But the difference between Shakey's and Pizza Hut was that Domino's was a delivery concept. So I said, well, okay, so the Japanese don't like pizza, but this is delivery pizza. Will that make a difference? Well, in the market research, which is of course a no-brainer, I said, Ernie, we had a thing traditionally called demai. We deliver sushi, we deliver, a bowl of noodles, we deliver everything. So if you deliver pizza, it's no big deal. In the States, outside of like New York or Philadelphia, actually delivery pizza was quite unique, and that's why Domino's became a nationwide chain and so successful. This is something you call up and you get a pizza, In Japan, everyone, was doing that. So this is no big deal. So, the Japanese don't like pizza and delivery is no big deal. So those are two pretty big strikes against this concept of Domino's. But then I thought about all those things I saw in Ann Arbor. I said, well, okay.
That was your driving force.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I said I didn't do the calculation.
You didn't do it. You just saw all the goodies. Okay.
I said, somehow I got to make this work. And so the thing is, what they did say was true. Actually, that was all correct. But when you do market research, it talks about the past and not about the future. And I was thinking that people's eating habits are changing. And at that time, there were a couple consumer trends that looked like it would favor, first of all, delivery. There was home entertainment becoming a big thing. Back then, it was like videos,
Right, yeah.
We didn't have Netflix, but
it was between the beta and the VHS.
Yes, and there was CDs, so people were spending more time at home rather than going out. And actually, women were working in the workforce. Even though they didn't have like full-time jobs or, maybe they couldn't get higher positions, over 50% of the women were already working, which meant that they didn't have time to do shopping or to do cooking. And that trend was already in the United States. So, my whole thing was, is this going to work or not, was to look and see what trends are occurring in the US and see if those would happen in Japan. The one good thing about Japan is, normally speaking, you don't need a crystal ball to figure out the future. You kind of look at a lot of the trends, not all of them, but happen in the US first, and then eventually they happen in Japan. So I thought, well, there is kind of a lifestyle change here. But this, not liking pizza might be an issue. So I realized that we had to kind of change the profile of the cheese taste to be a little bit more buttery. And because my sister had been selling pizza, she had kind of adjusted for the taste of the Japanese. So I had some idea. But then I had to kind of go beyond that. And I thought, well, I should come up with toppings the Japanese could understand, like squid or teriyaki chicken or eggplant. And I remember when I proposed that to Domino's, I said, no, Ernie, you're crazy,
You can't make a pizza that way.
Yeah, and that's not a pizza.
But it's not a pizza.
Right? It's got to be pepperoni, Italian sauce. Actually, Domino's had 12 toppings. Period, and one drink. So this is why we're successful. We keep it simple, no squid, no shrimp, no teriyaki chicken, none of that stuff, That's why you're franchising from us. I said, but Japan's different, they don't like pizza. We got to come with something that they're familiar with and, kind of, ease them into eating pizza, like these big companies are doing it, they're not so successful. Anyway, with the franchising business, that becomes an issue. Although I'm joking about it, actually, they're very strict on maintaining standards and keeping everything consistent, But I said, you have to think global and act local. And I'll tell you, the other chains are doing the same thing as the U.S., and I think that's part of the reason why they're not so successful. And so we've got to localize this thing. And that was actually a big issue. But I said, we just have to do this. And the other thing that was an issue is, as I said, everyone delivered. Demai is a traditional thing. So then my other strategy was, if I did bring Domino's to Japan, how do I differentiate ourselves from the demai concept? And you know, Japan, service is second to none in the restaurant business, and it's very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But in the demai segment, that's the one segment where, you know, they say, okyakusama kami-sama, or the customer is God here. But
Mm-hmm.
the one segment where they're not God is the demai segment. You know,
now, demai means what?
they deliver delivery.
Delivery. Demai.
So, yes.
Demai.
Demai, yeah. So if you order a bowl of noodles, most demai stores, what it is they have a customers come to the restaurant,
Right.
and they also do delivery, kind of like on the side.
Right.
So the customers get first priority, the guys that are in the restaurant. Because if you're slow or whatever, they yell and scream at you, so you give them the priority. So the guy that asks for, you know, delivery or demai is already a second-class citizen in terms of customer, because you know they're far away. So you know, sometimes you ask for it, it could be an hour. Then you call up and they say, you know, oh, you know, we just left or whatever.
Yeah,
you know, it gets there cold. But then the customer got used to the fact that because it's delivery, it's going to be late, it's going to be not the best, and so on. So this was the one segment of the restaurant industry which was really, in a way, underserved.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing about Domino's was that they guaranteed 30-minute delivery.
At the beginning, you sure did.
Yeah,
Right.
and it's hot.
That's right.
And so, and the thing is, you can't have it right out of the oven. It's too hot, actually. You burn your tongue. So the whole point was, by the time you deliver, it was the right temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And what most people don't realize is how we developed the delivery era is that everything's done by time. From the time you took the order by phone, you made the pizza in 2 minutes. Then it was a 6-minute oven time, so it was 8 minutes. Then it would leave the store around 10 minutes to 12 minutes. And our delivery era is defined by a time zone, actually. So at the busiest time, you know, the furthest place you could deliver was within 7 minutes.
Okay.
So you still had time before 30 minutes. So the point is that, you know, it's quite hot by the time you deliver, because we're looking actually at, you know, 7 to 9 minute kind of delivery times after the pizza's made out of the oven. And so that's one of the things which, of course, I kept from the U.S. You know, I didn't change everything. So there's, you know, part of the reason why Domino's is so successful, they had this great operations, great kind of system, and I maintained that in Japan. The reverse, actually, for my people, is a 30-minute delivery. You know, it's not like the U.S. You know, there are no street names. You don't know where you are. You get lost. And how can we maintain 30 minutes?
At that time.
No GPS.
That's right.
But you see, the thing about think global and act local was important to know why was it so important, why was it so successful in the U.S. that you should not adapt for Japan? And then what do you have to adapt for Japan? You have to understand both. It's not just adapting completely for Japan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's the phrase think global, act local existed, but my own take on that, but don't go too native. Because don't go too native. You can over-adapt.
Okay.
Or you can adapt the wrong things.
Right. And then you impede your growth.
And then there's no point in
Right.
tying up with a U.S. company in that case, right? It's just your own original concept.
Right.
And there's a reason why Domino's was so successful. You know, it has to do with systems, it has to do with concepts, it has to do with a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But where you localize actually is where you touch the consumer. That's in product development or in marketing and so on. You know, that is a distinction.
Mm-hmm.
But you can overdo it. So I didn't want to change the systems they operate. That's why they're successful. That's why I paid them royalty.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's making that decision. You know, there's no manual on localization, and so you kind of have to have a sense of that.
They've adopted that now. They've had to, or they?
Well,
is Domino's? I know you sold the company.
Yes.
Is it still under the franchise? It's still a franchise business from
Correct.
the US?
Yes, it
So
is.
they're still obligated to certain things, because I noticed you changed
Yes.
one other thing that was changed. No more 30-minute deliveries. You told
Correct.
me because too many accidents.
Not here in the U.S.
It wasn't because of here?
No.
I thought you said
No.
because those guys in school.
No.
The US had too many accidents, so they changed the policy.
Yeah. Well, so.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's because of here.
Well, so I'll tell you that. So when I started this thing, we really grew, and so did a lot of our competition. All of a sudden, we had everybody and their brother following us and doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they did not have the system that I just mentioned of how to deliver in 30 minutes. So they would make the pizza very slow, and then they would speed to get it within 30 minutes. And also, they didn't have this time zone. See, we didn't go by distance. As I said, we went by time zone. So you know, we actually delivered in a very tight area. So it didn't require speeding. And also there was no penalty if the driver was late. So we were okay, but unfortunately a lot of our competition was doing it the wrong way. And so they had a lot of accidents. Okay. But we were the most high profile company. So we would get claims from people that your driver is quick. We didn't even have a store there. But because Domino's was the predominant brand, everyone thought that, yes, it was us. And so I was concerned about that. So I actually developed an industry-wide organization tying up with the police department to train our drivers as well as the drivers of the industry. And I became the chairman of this industry organization. And it's the first time the police department ever dealt with the private sector. I remember when I first went to them, you know, they said, Ernie, we cannot, you know, work with the private sector, you know, we're the police department. And I said, okay, I get it. I said, but you know, my understanding is that the biggest concern, or one of the biggest concerns for the police department is the number of traffic accidents and deaths. And given that there's two areas that are, the two categories of people that cause the most deaths and accidents, the very old and the very young. And so we have nothing to do with the very old, but the very young, they work in our stores. So I said, you know, if you say, okay, we're going to do a safety driving lesson or a contest, no one's going to show up. You know, say Madonna concert, maybe they show up. But I said, if they work in the stores and you work with us, we will make sure that they will be trained by professionals, by the police department on safety driving. You can lecture them, because this is one of the most important things for the police department was the traffic accidents. And I said, yeah, you know, that's actually a pretty good idea, because that was one of their initiatives. How do we reduce traffic accidents? And they took you on that. So I actually got awarded by, at that time, Prime Minister Hashimoto for putting this organization together. And it's the first time that the police actually worked with a private sector initiative. And I made sure that it was for the whole industry, but it was not an industry organization. It was an industry organization only for safety driving. I didn't want to dilute the fact. You know, you have a lot of like this association for, say, you know, I don't know, a certain industry, but I wanted to make this an association only for safety driving, to concentrate on that.
But only scooters, of course.
Yes, and so because by then we had, you know, delivery. Bento. See, what happened is Demai existed, but then we made it systematic, and we started using these unique scooters, because it was another kind of differentiating point for other Demais. But everyone started to go to our system, including the Bento and all these other people, Sushi and so on. So I didn't use the word Demai, by the way. Another point of differentiation, I didn't want to call us Demai because there was then a preconception by the consumer that we're just like the soba guys. Right. So I used the word takuhai, which means delivery. And so I came up with it. So it's not called everyone calls it takuhai pizza or takuhai this and that. But the point is, it was a systematic way of delivery, and all of them joined this safety driving organization. And so it's nationwide. It's, you know, you're talking about tens of thousands of drivers, and they're all being trained. And we did this in conjunction with the police department.
Do they continue that? Is it still
yes, it's a very vibrant thing. It's very critical.
You know, you should get them to do that with these new cab drivers.
Cab drivers.
Tell me, these guys are driving us nuts. Yeah. They're causing a lot of havoc. They're not like they were during the bubble time.
Well, that's because they deregulated it.
I know, and all these guys that lost their jobs just became cab drivers.
I couldn't agree more, except we have our hands full, because I'm still part of that organization, because I founded it. But, you know, but this was an important initiative because we were growing so quickly, but so was the industry. And so if we didn't have something like that, you know, then the negative side of, you know, delivery pizza or delivery in general would become an issue. And so fortunately, we're able to deliver that. So to your point, we did not have an issue with it. But what happened is there was by Domino's, a major accident in the United States. And as a result of that, they decided to stop the 30-minute guarantee, and accordingly they asked us to stop the 30-minute guarantee.
I thought that was here.
No, so
that's all I knew. Was just
so we well, you know, so they're the franchisor, and we followed their directive. But that was the thing. They didn't do what we did. I always felt that was important to have something about safety driving and training. In the U.S., they did not.
And I'm sure you approached them with it and told them.
Well, I told them what we're doing here, but they didn't think it was necessary there. And there, of course, they didn't use scooters; they used cars. Everyone, of course, they drove their own cars.
That's right.
So, and they got what they call mileage. In our case, because we couldn't do that same model, we have to provide all the scooters, and we had to take more responsibility for our drivers. And anyway, the point was that I developed this Safety Driving Association for that very point, to avoid what happened in the United States, actually. And accordingly, though, I had to stop the 30-minute guarantee when they had an issue. So.
How long did you keep Domino's Pizza? How long was it under you?
Oh, gosh.
How many years?
Let's see. Good question.
2 decades? Almost.
Yeah, more than 2 decades.
Yeah.
25 years, maybe.
Yeah,
something like that.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because I remember the last time we went out, Louis Victon was telling me, your good friend Louis, Tobacco Man.
Yeah. Cigar guy.
Right, the cigar guy. How you had, it was like, not a fan base, like a mob base. Your employees.
Ah, yes.
Your fan base was just phenomenal. He said he went to one event you had where all of your employees were there, and when you walked in, they picked you up, and he said he had to step back because they mobbed you. And he said it was scary for him. He had to drag. In fact, he had to take you one time and protect you one time.
Okay, well, so let me explain that a little bit. It could be misinterpreted. This is in the 1980s, and so several things were happening in the 1980s. It was a bubble economy, so whatever business you did, it went up.
That's right.
And then the restaurant industry was a growth industry again. I actually thought I was a genius, Lance, to realize everyone was doing well in the 1980s. And I realized, and then when we went, no big deal. Then all of a sudden I realized I wasn't. I became real quick. Yeah, but the thing was, so during the 80s, when we opened the Domino's stores, we were making money right away. It was phenomenal. Our biggest barrier to growth was people, both part-timers and full-time employees. And we couldn't, we advertised and everything, we could not get enough people. And the restaurant industry, part of the service industry, considered what they call 3K. Kitsui, kitanai, and kiken. And so, and that's like, kiss of death kind of industry. It wasn't a bank, it wasn't, one of these other kind of companies. So it was tough getting people. I'm talking not the best and brightest, just warm bodies. We just needed people. If we got people, we could open more stores. And it was a slam dunk thing. And I owned and operated all the stores, I didn't franchise it. So, the whole point was, how can I get people? And one of the things, we had, 7,000, 8,000 out-of-buyers of part-timers working for us. And I thought,
7,000?
Yes.
Right.
We went up to about 8,000. But anyway, so I had a lot of, we were always trying to get part-timers. So I got this idea, and this is in the 80s again. So discos were the hot things back then.
That's what just happened. Okay.
Yeah, and I said, well, listen, it'd be cool if I held a disco party for part-timers. And in the hottest discos, which they could only hear about and never go, like Belfari, Juliana, all these. And I would rent it out and have a party for what we call the crew convention for these part-timers. And so that means we'd have like 1,000 at a time, for example. And we would do it in several sessions. Daytime, no alcohol, of course, with that many people, and they're all young. But we would really make it a cool place, and the venues are already, kind of hot, and we would do all this kind of motivational things. And so, and the idea here was, number one, enhance retention, because you had turnover, then that's one thing. The other thing was to make them feel that they're working more than just for a part-time job, but for this company, and we have a corporate culture. But the other thing is, if we're very successful, they might even become full-time employee. And so there was this, and as I said, the whole point was if we had people, we could open more stores. That was our biggest barrier to growth. So I spent a lot of money on these crew conventions, which was in these discos. So I took Louis to one of them. You see, and it becomes a little bit kind of cultish because you
It's
kind of
very
have,
cultish.
we had like entertainers come, we do all these speeches, we have presentations.
And you had food and everything else.
Yes,
The bar,
all that
food,
stuff,
everything.
except for alcohol, but yeah,
Excellent.
everything's
Yeah,
free.
food,
And so, there's a lot of hype and a lot of things going on. So Lewis saw some of that. I won't go into the details, but yes, it was a thing that we did, and which made us very unique. Actually, though, on that point about getting enough people, someone told me if you have a formula team, you can get a lot of people.
A formula team meaning what?
A formula race.
Okay.
Race team, okay, yeah. And not a Formula One, because that's global and that's expensive. But back then, a Formula 3000, Formula 3 was within Japan. Still expensive, by the way. So I had three race teams, including a Formula team and race queens and all that.
You had?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. And I spent all this money, and it didn't help us, by the way. They were all wrong. So after 1 year, I quit.
With Domino's as the...
Yeah, I was a sponsor. It was my team, yeah.
Okay.
And you can't just have that team. You also had to have a advertising firm to help promote it.
Everything.
So it's millions of dollars for this thing. But as I said, if we're able to get people, we could make money. So I spent time and effort and money on how we can get more people, actually, back then. Part of this disco thing, but that wasn't the whole thing. We had to kind of, go way beyond that. When that didn't work, that's when I decided, okay, the number one destination for all Japanese is Hawaii. So if I bought Domino's Hawaii and I started exchange programs, then I could get people to come here so you can go to Hawaii maybe. It's like a lottery. Not everybody can go. At that time, it was up to 9,000 people. And so I bought Hawaii, and I figured Hawaii's a small market, but I bought Hawaii from Tom Mana, because it was originally a corporate.
How many stores did that mean?
They had about, 30.
On how many islands?
On most of the islands.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a total of 30 stores about?
30 some stores, yeah.
Okay.
And I figured I just need to break even there. And but the main thing was, of course, Japan, Japanese market. And that ended up being actually a big attraction, because although we were part of the 3K kind of industry, within the 3K, we were more attractive for if someone's going to join the restaurant industry. And then, of course, we did these, disco conventions. We did all these things. And in Hawaii, So the Formula team didn't work, but Hawaii did. And that was kind of driving us in terms of people. So crew convention was part of this thing, but it was really all about recruiting. And, it was an interesting time because, as I said, during the bubble era, everything went up, and so we were doubling, every year, and what that means is like your accounting systems fall apart because you can't keep up, and so I remember originally I had this person who by hand, salary calculator, but when we got to several thousand, we had to go computerize and do a lot of things. But I remember the accounting, because you couldn't keep up. So I finally said, listen, how much cash is coming into our bank and how much is leaving? I just want to know this. Let's keep it up. When accounting gets done, when the P&L gets fine, but I can't wait for that. I got to know what's going on. But anyway, it was unusual growth back then. But we, obviously it's a very labor-intensive business. So also we had.
Of course, you got married during that time too, while you had Domino's.
Yes, eventually I got married.
Wait, you had your surgical implants. You had the lumber company. Are you still doing those two?
No, I sold the lumber business as well as the medical business.
Medical business. Yeah. So you have now, because you changed from one 3K business to another one.
Yeah.
You brought, Wendy's had been here twice, right?
Right.
And you brought it in the third time.
Yes.
With Froggle Burgers.
That's a whole nother story. Whole nother story.
And then you bought First Kitchen as well.
Well, yeah. So
so Domino's, you sold Domino's.
Yeah.
And then you were not involved in 3K business for a while.
Yes.
How long was that?
So I was involved. It was another business I had, which is importing food products for the institutional trade. So I sell to all the major chains, restaurant chains, convenience stores, and food manufacturers.
You still do that?
Yeah, I still have it. And so I was doing that.
All right. So that's always been like a staple.
Yeah, one of the things that I kept. Yeah.
So you do that through Higa Industries.
Correct. Yeah.
And then what made you decide to go for Wendy's? Now, Wendy's is something that I remember from the
yes.
bubble time, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was always good. The chocolate milkshakes they had, the Frosties. They had the
Yes.
chocolate Frosty and the square burgers. It had a different taste than McDonald's for sure.
But it didn't work.
It didn't, but it was good.
Yeah.
It was really, really good. It was right there in Ibisu, the one they had in Ibisu. And right down the street from Kentucky was there. McDonald's wasn't in Ibisu at all. Now, only thing that's there now is McDonald's.
Yeah, I know.
You know that, right?
I know. I definitely know that.
What made you decide to go to Wendy's?
Okay, so all these stories have been long stories, so I got a call from the American Embassy. They said, Ernie, the Wendy's people want to come back for a third time. Are you interested? I said, no way, Jose.
Wait just a minute. Wait.
Yeah.
So the embassy calls you out.
Yeah, because they knew I did Domino's. Yeah, from the commercial department.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
They said, hey, we have this hot deal for you.
No, these Wendy's people were here. They wanted to meet some people.
And you said, of course, they couldn't.
And I said, first off, no, I'm not going to do it. But I said, I wouldn't mind meeting them, give them free advice because I have some experience, but I'm not going to do it. They said, oh, fine. And so we just meet with them because they're there. I said, okay. So I met with them. And so I said, I did Domino's, explained to them, by the way, adaptation. I said, one of the things you have to do is maybe adapt Wendy's a little bit more for the Japanese market. I said, yeah, we agree with you, and so on. I said, so you want to do it? I said, no, I don't want to do it. I said, are you free for dinner? I said, yeah, I'm free for dinner, yeah. So let's have dinner. I said, okay. So, we're having dinner. I said, do you want to do it?
These owners or just people coming?
These were the executives from Wendy's.
Okay, just fillers. Okay, just trying to see what's out there.
The head of international, actually.
Who owns Wendy's in the U.S.?
It's a public company.
It's a public company?
Yes. It's a $9 billion company traded on the New York Stock Exchange.
Based in the U.S., where?
In Ohio.
In Ohio.
Well, actually, in Dublin, Ohio.
In Dublin, Ohio, okay.
Yeah. And so it was a big company.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so the head of international was here, and so we're having dinner, and he says, do you want to do it? I said, no, I don't want to do it, because I knew the history of Wendy's. It did not do well with a big company like Daiei. And then the second time with Zensho, which is today the largest restaurant operator in Japan. So, those guys can't do it, I said, I don't think I can do it. But anyway, I was having some vodka tonics. And then the third vodka tonic I drank, I started saying, maybe this is interesting. I mean, as an entrepreneur, by the way, one of the things is you have several faults as an entrepreneur. One is you're an optimist. The other is you kind of like challenges. Because if you don't like those two things, if you're not an optimist and you don't like challenge, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur.
But all this time, they're constantly feeding you how it'd be so good for you to bring it back and how much support they're going to give you when you set it up.
Yes. Yeah. And that's how I agree with you. You should adapt when you need to adapt for Japan. All the things.
Everything you said, they were just...
but it was the third vodka tonic that convinced me, not what they're telling me. I said, this is very interesting. Maybe I should do this thing. And so it was not I really did not. I mean, it didn't work twice with these large companies. It's not going to, work a third time, I thought. And, I knew the reasons why it didn't work. I said McDonald's. McDonald's is like 76% market share of the hamburger segment, right? And that's like a monopoly. Number two is Mossburger with 10%,
You know the story of Mossburger? How you know what they did when I first came to Japan? They had vending machines, and they were selling hamburgers. Now all I knew was McDonald's, and Mossburgers had Mac Burger, the big M, the arch, A C, and then it said burger. So I thought it was McDonald's. Put my coin in the vending machine, took the hamburger out. I don't know what kind of meat they used, but it was not beef.
Yeah, it's pork, actually.
It was horrible.
It's called
it was not good. It was not good at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, McDonald's found out what they were doing. Had nothing to do with me. Found out what they were doing. Got them to change the mark. And they did. They changed it, the M, and they stopped making it red, to Moss Burger. They tried to copy Mac. They were very big on doing that. And they had a Mac Burger first, then they changed to Moss Burger. And had their own little style and everything else, because Mac sued them and won.
I see.
Southern won, yeah.
Well, they're a far number two at 10%,
no doubt
and then Lotteria at 5%. So,
and who's Lotte?
Lotteria.
Lotteria, yeah.
So if you look at that, I mean, why would you get into the hamburger business? And so I knew that. That's why I was, and when you have such a dominant player, you know, and this business, chain business, is actually about critical mass, market penetration, those things. And so it was already a saturated industry. When I did Domino's, of course, I was a pioneer. Mm-hmm. I said people didn't like pizza. Eventually they did. So, you know, it wasn't like I had a lot of competition, you know. But with hamburgers, you're talking about a very saturated market with a very strong player like McDonald's. So, knowing that, I said, well, maybe I can do something, right? As I said, it was a third vodka tonic. It wasn't they're convincing me. And I'll never do that again. I go up to 2 vodka tonics. I avoid the third one these days. If it's a business, yeah, pleasure. You know, I'll go to 5 maybe, but you know, business now 2. So we you know, started negotiating terms and contracts, all this kind of stuff. And then as we signed this contract, you know, March 11th happened, and you know, there's Daishinsai and Fukushima. Right. And I'm sitting there saying, okay, I should be signing this contract. So I started to think about it. And I got a call from Wendy and said, oh, you know, you okay? You know, you're radioactive? I said, no, I'm okay. But I'm wondering about this contract. Oh, no, we should go ahead. Don't you think so? And, you know, I said, well, gosh, you know, this is a tough challenge because I didn't know how Japan was going to, you know, get out of this thing. It was. I mean, you can remember American Club was deserted. All the guys were leaving, you know.
They called them fly G.
Yeah, I mean, everyone.
The French, the German left.
Well,
some stayed here.
Yeah, the embassy advised them to leave.
They took off.
Yeah,
they took off.
So it was kind of like a dark time. But
you hadn't gotten the contract. You hadn't signed the contract or done anything by that time yet.
I was thinking about it. So that was in the middle of our signing the contract. But then, you know, once you get into a negotiation, I said, what the heck, go with it. So I signed it, and then, you know, I'll never forget this, typical of U.S. companies, all those things we talked about, adaptation and so on, you know, and they want to really push international expansion. Well, they changed the president, public company, and the next president says everything has to be the U.S. way. It has to be the same size, all this kind of stuff. And we're not, you know, I said, oh my gosh, you know, and I already signed the thing. And that was not included in the contract, you know, just terms and conditions. So I said, but you know, big stores are, you know, tough in Japan and you know, and so on. And to get good locations is tough. And that was one of the things, unlike Domino's, Wendy's concept requires what they call A location, high traffic locations. And you know, we're already in deflation now. I did Domino's in bubble economy, but in deflation, even in deflation, everybody wants the A location, whether it's a bank or it's a convenience store, a drugstore, whatever. Because if you're in the retail business, you can't make money in the B location. The problem is that since everyone wants it, there's no A locations available. And if you get it, you can't make any money on hamburgers. If you're selling Louis Vuitton, Gucci, yeah, you have the market, yeah. So, but then you need to get to critical mass. So this is like a chicken and egg situation, you know. And then anyway, so I made a couple of these big stores, and I said, look, and it was not working out on the bottom line. So we gotta change, and we gotta make them small for Japan. I said, this is one of my, you know, localization things. This is like a you know, a no-brainer, you know, and you know, these rents are like high, and we can't get too many of these great locations. So this is also another issue, which was not their issue, but how do we deal with this thing to get to critical mass? And because that allows you for purchasing power, for, you know, marketing and all this kind of other stuff, and recruiting. So fortunately, I knew the owner of Suntory, Saji-san, and we were having a conversation and dinner, and he says, "Oh, you're doing Wendy's?" I said, "Yeah, I'm doing Wendy's." You know? I said, and he said, "Well, I have this First Kitchen, you know, hamburger chain. You know, maybe we can do something together." And I said, "Well, yeah, maybe. You know, that sounds like a good idea to me." So, but you know, it was over dinner and over some drinks. So I wanted to confirm that, so I made a point with him. The head office, you know, we had dinner the other night, but you talked about, you know, First Kitchen, and he had all his executives there, you know. And he says, yes, I did, and yeah, you know, I think you know, it could be interesting. So, so I said, okay, let's try this thing. So he had about 130 stores in good locations, because he'd been doing this for 40 years, and localized for the Japanese people, obviously. But for them, it was a decimal point. It wasn't really growing for them. So you wanted to know what we could do together to enhance the business. So we came up with, well, let's combine the brands and combine the best sellers of both businesses, because I had a couple of stores and I knew what sold here and so on. And we'll call it Wendy's First Kitchen. Well, you can imagine Wendy's in the U.S. What? We're Wendy's. We do $9 billion in sales there, and we have 6,500 stores in 37 countries, all Wendy's. What's this Wendy's First Kitchen stuff?
Right?
Yeah, we don't need that. It's like, having a fashion company called, Louis Vuitton Shida June. You just don't do that. I said, well, that's true. Louis Vuitton Shida June. I don't know. Does not resonate. But I said, this is third time around. You gotta change it. So anyway, as I mentioned, they changed presidents again. Public company, third time around. Well, this guy was more flexible. And I was still, I was working on this, Wendy's First Kitchen, because now I knew this is the way to get, out of the chicken egg situation, give me critical mass, give me good location at legacy rents, because they had rented from before. And it came along, they had 3,300 people. So I said, wow, this will give me people, because until December of 2019, there was a labor shortage. Even today, there's a labor shortage, even with Corona, especially in retail segment. So this would give me, people that are already trained in the restaurant thing. I just have to train them in the Wendy's way. But anyway, so we started to talk with Suntory, and we actually did another market research. Not that market research are always correct, by the way, but in this case, we wanted to know what people liked about First Kitchen, what people liked about Wendy's at that time, because we had a few stores. So it turned out that First Kitchen was about 70% female, and they liked the fact that had a lot of desserts. It was a lower price menu, and it was everywhere in very, very good locations and very convenient. What was kind of one of the issues with First Kitchen that came out of the market research, it didn't have very strong branding or very strong brand image. And no one knew what kind of store it was. It wasn't like a specialty store. They were kind of all over the map in terms of their menu. With our Wendy's stores, it was 60% male, and our prices were higher. And we didn't have any idle time menus. We only had lunch and dinner. But we had a very clear branding, and everyone knew it was a hamburger store. So I said, okay, let's put this together, put all the stuff that sells, And so, but what came out also as market research is what neither brand had, which is kind of the third place that Starbucks has developed, where you have a coffee, and you have charging stations for your mobile or your laptop, and you spend time there. And that's critical, because between lunch and dinner you have the idle time, and the rents are fixed. So how do you also do business during that idle time? And so we included like having charger stations, a little bit more of a cafe feel. So we put this, interior kind of change there to enhance in both the First Kitchen, the Wendy's, with this kind of cafe style, portion as well. And the first store we chose was the Roppongi store. And
to combine.
Yes.
Right.
And so we figured if it did about year on year 120%, then that would make sense. Well, when we did it, it went over 200%. So I said, oh, this is pretty good. But of course, in Japan, you have this novelty effect, and it settles down. Of course, yeah. But it settled down about 160% year on year, which is quite a lot beyond our expectation. But it was in Roppongi, and as you know, that's kind of a unique place, a lot of gaijin. Yes. So yeah. So let's take a more typical location, Ueno. And that went up and held at about 130% year on year. So we said, this is good. So then the next step was to buy the whole First Kitchen chain and eventually convert it. So that's what we did. So we bought the First Kitchen chain from Suntory. They had 130 stores, nationwide here and there. And we started to convert them. And each time we converted them, the sales would go up. And so that's how I ended up with that. And it's
doing well.
Yes, knock on wood. Of course, Corona has come and changed that a little bit, right?
That's affecting everyone now.
But So it's doing very well, and so, but like everything, like with Domino's, by the way, after I got it going, one of the things I did, which they didn't do in the States, is I was the first one to go to internet ordering, and also I was the first one to develop an app on the iPhone, by the way. Domino's at that time told me, don't waste your time and money on the internet. It was my time, my money, my effort, and when I sold Domino's, 60% of our sales was the internet. And now Domino's says they're an internet company. They started afterwards, but we actually started first here. Well, likewise, I knew that we should kind of up the bar with IT on these stores. So tying up with Wendy's is one thing, combining it was another thing, but taking it to the next level. And we were, of course, anticipating the Olympics this year.
Right.
So what we thought is we'd put in these kiosks, touchscreen kiosks to order. And it would be in 4 languages, Chinese, Korean, English, and Japanese. So we started to, if you look at it, so we started to roll out these kiosks. So it can handle multiple languages. And of course we installed WeChat and all this kind of, Alipay and all these things for Chinese tourists as well, and all these, non-cash payment companies. And in anticipation. But the other thing is that it also reduced our labor costs because we didn't need anyone at a cash register. So, but we were gearing up. We also developed a mobile app in English and Japanese. And so
Wendy's now, you can order to bring home?
Oh yeah, we always did takeout.
You always did takeout?
Yeah.
So is that the biggest part of your business now?
Well, so obviously our mix changed because primarily we're like eat-in 80%. And then take out 20%, but with COVID now it's 60% eat-in and then 40% takeout and delivery. We've tied up with the Uber Eats of the world, the Micon. And so we're actually lucky because in COVID, the idea is that no one really wants to eat in so much, and so having already a takeout kind of setup, and then just extend that to delivery by tying up with these third-party delivery companies, for us is natural. If you're just a typical eat-in store, it's difficult. The other thing that we're very lucky, of course, is that our main business, like daytime, and then we're not like a pub where we have alcohol at nighttime and so on. So let's put it, we were affected but less affected. Although fortunately things have started to come back from the April-May period where things were really tough.
Where do you see things going from here? I mean, you're at the stage right now and you have a 60-40%, 40% home, 60% inside the restaurants. What do you think 2021 is going to bring in? 2022, 2023? Let's go out to that far.
Oh, okay. Well, as I said, so one of the character faults of being an entrepreneur is you're an optimist. So I don't believe that we're going to always have to deal with COVID situation. I mean, it'll get to the point where whether it's a vaccine and treatment, certainly both, the effects are not going to be so severe. Maybe we'll always have COVID, but we'll have a way to deal with it so that it doesn't affect our normal lives. Because basically COVID is so, it's really in my own opinion, human. It's against human interactions, socializing, going out, all the things that we love to do as people, we cannot do because of Corona. And I think that there's a strong desire for people to come back. People talk about the new normal. I don't know about the new normal. I know that people want to go back to the old normal, as far as I'm concerned. And we might not get 100% back to the old normal. There'll be a big trend towards going back to being able to talk to your friends, being able to go out,
hands,
enjoy each other. I mean, those are like natural things which we took for granted, but that's so important now. We realize.
It's really become enhanced.
Yeah, we have realized, what a privilege that was, but it's also part of our DNA as people. So I think that, already, even without the vaccine or without the treatment, our sales have come up. Because people are saying, okay, look, we can't be cooking at home every day and staying inside every day. We have to be safe. There's some protocols. All of our stores have implemented protocols, safety things, like we have here at the American Club.
That's right.
And you know, so people want to come back. People have come back to our store. Our sales are going up. So going into 2021, I believe, of course, you know, there's a concern now that infection rates have come up, and so that would perhaps make a little bit of a damper on sales in general in the consumer segment. But I don't think it will go back to the April-May things where it was, you know, it was such a novel thing and people didn't know how to react.
That's why it was all.
It was a knee-jerk reaction. Now I think you know, people understand it a little bit more, and people are taking precautions, and so you know, you realize that you know, you can't give up your whole life, so you just have to be more cautious. And I think that and as the vaccine and treatments come into place, and as we learn more about the virus, you know, I think that people want to go back to the old normal. So the 2021 situation, in my perspective, being an optimist, first of all, is that I think the first half will be, you know, what we have now, or a little bit, or maybe, you know, because of infection rates going up, maybe a little bit more challenging. But one of the things that the Japanese government has done is they've kept Olympics there.
They did.
In July.
That surprised me because I thought it was just they were going to have to let it go.
And I think that's important in many ways, and certainly psychologically. It gives you a goal to say, let's get all of our protocols, safety protocols, with or without corona, with or without the vaccine, rather, so that we can get almost back to the old normal. Have people watch this, you know, spectacular event, you know, which is the Olympics, historic. You know, let's not, you know, lose that. And as you know, they're doing a lot of experimentation. They're having, you know, stadiums fill up now and see how that works and so on. Yeah, they are for sports events.
They're not going to try to do the social distancing. They're just going to put them.
Well, they're doing this now with the sporting events that they're having. Because they're trying to see what are the necessary protocols for the Olympics, right? So they're trying to, you know, do this real time, you know, with real people and see how this can be done, because that goal is there. You know, they've maintained that. I think it's a smart thing. I mean, at the end of the day, if it's like, you know, everything's really, you know, terrible at that stage of the game, of course, probably they might call it off. But I think keeping it there, and I think things will actually, the protocols will be there, even if, say, the vaccine might not be, you know, distributed for everybody. I think that they'll have enough protocols in place and enough to kind of people would, I think, feel assured of the safety to come, and the athletes would feel safe to participate. But beyond that, you know, I think the psychological effect, both not only for Japan but for the world, to have this Olympics because of this pandemic, I think is very critical. So, and I really believe we're going to have it. I really believe it'll be successful, whatever format it takes. Post that Olympics, I think that, you know, there will be almost a kind of a resurgence of consumer spending. I think the economy will get better by then. Certainly the vaccine will be more prevalent, and I think that, so as I said, I'm an optimist, so I think the second half will look good. So then going 2022 or whatever, I think we'll be closer to the old normal.
Because I've heard in different places that they think, that someone said they see 2022, 23 being almost like a heyday, almost like a pre-bubble. That those years up till like 2023, maybe into 24, then one more time.
Oh,
have you heard that?
Well,
I've heard something similar to that.
I don't know, so I haven't heard that. Okay. But how I feel is that it will be a bubble, but I don't want it to pop.
I know, neither do I. But that's what that
I loved the
80s.
The bubble in the 80s.
So did I.
I thought it was great.
I loved it too.
And the reason, you know, of course, economy, everything is great, but you know, a lot of things are great. I mean, like if you look at Egypt, they didn't build the pyramids in a deflationary environment. It had to be a bubble, right?
It had to be. You're right.
You're right. Renaissance.
You're right.
You know,
all these great things that man has known.
Yeah.
When we went to the moon.
You know, the issue with a bubble is not. You know, first of all, I think it's great. I think there's nothing wrong with the bubble, but the issue is, do you go for a soft landing or a hard landing? And in Japan's case, the government specifically went for a hard landing. And they did everything they could to pop the bubble for a hard landing, increasing all these kind of taxes and so on, and they did. And that's what we've had over 30 years of this downturn. You know, I mean, I went to business school. They said, Ernie, you know, economy is cyclical. They go up and go down. They never go straight down. Yeah, I mean.
But you were in Japan when you heard that.
Oh my gosh, you know, they got to rewrite the books. So China is in a bubble, but they're trying to go for a soft landing. They're trying to engineer that, right? Because you will have bubbles. But what the idea is, as I said, bubbles are great, but you know they will, you know, eventually you're not going to always have keep that bubble. But soft landing and hard landing is the issue. You see. So this poof stuff you talked about,
that's Japan.
Let's hope that this time the Japanese government, the government will then say, hopefully in their wisdom, that the last time we went for a hard landing was not so good, 30-some years, you know.
Like an albatross trying to land.
So let's try soft landing this time, right? And that's what I'm hoping for. So, you know, and you know, this is just basic stuff. I mean, you know, if you could go back to those, you know, I'd say, well, who likes a hard landing? You know, they actually liked it, and then now they regret it. But you know, they went for a hard landing.
They did.
Yeah, and boy, it was hard.
Oh, listen.
Yeah, they rewrote all the books in economics.
You're talking.
You know.
You're preaching to the choir.
So you know, because Japan's economy has faced two things. So we've been in deflation. So one is the economy. The other thing is the federal deficit. 240% of GDP. That's pretty high. So, you know, so the government, their wisdom, says, okay, let's resolve both in one step. So we'll resolve the federal deficit by increasing taxes. Well, what happens? The economy shrinks. So then the tax dollars actually shrinks, you know. And so they raise the tax and they get less money. Meanwhile, that devastates the economy, right? They raise the consumption tax, you know, 3 to 5 didn't work, from 5 to 8 it didn't work, they raised 8 to 10. You know, you can make a mistake once, but 3 times. So that's an issue. And every time they get less taxes, right? Because the thing is, unless you have a growth economy, you will never be able to resolve the federal deficit. So Japan, only Japan, or Japan's one strength, it can do a two-step process. Because Japan owns most of their debt, over 90-some%.
They do, yes.
Yeah, so the left pocket, right pocket. Yeah, they don't have to borrow from the IMF or from, you know, so, you know.
Thank you, Ernie. I've talked to so many people to tell them that. They don't understand that.
Yeah, but at 240% of debt, we should be worse than Greece anyway. But it hasn't.
But also, too, don't forget, culturally.
Yeah.
Over this 2,000 or 4,000 years of history, Japan has convinced all of its people that they're homogenous. And they're very, very obedient to whatever the society is told to do. The other countries aren't.
Well, that's why they were mass. But anyway, so you know,
that was no issue.
So that was a good thing. So you know, if they take a two-step process, they should even reduce taxes, in my own opinion. Grow the economy, and because tax is a whole other thing. It's a very negative subject, but they got to reduce it. Grow the economy. Then when they have a growth economy, then they can handle the federal deficit. See. And that is what they have not done every time. And that's why we've continued down this path of, you know, first the worst recession is the war, which I thought was bad. Then we went to deflation, which is even worse. Yeah. So and then we went to Corona.
Corona doesn't help anything. But there's one thing too, Ernie. The government is very, very lenient as far as giving out money, but most people don't know how to get it. They have a lot of money they're giving to people. You don't have to give it back for companies. You don't even have to give it back, or at 0.1%. But most people don't know how to file for it. They don't know how to go about it. They're not being educated how to get these funds. But they are here. They most definitely are here. That's just the masses. It's kind of like when we say in different businesses, you say, okay, we're going to give everyone some money back, but they have to apply for it.
They do make it difficult.
They do, most definitely.
And it's bureaucratic.
It is.
As you know, so one of the initiatives of the Suga administration is to digitalize the government, and part of that is hopefully make it less bureaucratic, more easy for things like this. You know, right now, so there's money there, but how do you get it?
That's right.
Yeah, and particularly if you're a individual small owner,
those are the ones that need the most.
The paperwork, I mean, it blow you away.
They have no clue.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't work.
Right.
So they have now Ministry of Digitalization. Happens to be a good friend of mine, the minister, Higa-san. I knew him from the old days. And of course,
he's not at Tokyo Club by any chance, is he?
no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
And Taro Kono, who is the minister of Ministry of Reform or whatever, who's also a good guy, and I know him. And the combination there will be to first to make the government more efficient, and of course, digitalizing it will allow a lot of things to happen. Well, now that's the agenda if they are able to do it,
And also educate the people on how to be able to use this digital.
That's the other side, because as you know, it's still an analog society.
It wouldn't matter. You still can't get in there.
Well, so we have an aged population, and I'm part of that. Anyone over the age of 20, can't deal with all this digital stuff. But we're going to have to learn. They're going to have to make it user friendly. Yeah, hopefully. But having said that, doing it is better than not doing it. So we will have to learn. But it's difficult for the mom and pops certainly.
That's right.
But on the other hand, to be very honest with you, so the amount of money they give you, is also nominal. It doesn't keep you in business.
That's true.
And so really, what they have to do. Handouts and so on, okay, it's fine, it's a temporary stopgap, but really what they have to do is tax reform to get the economy growing. That is the bigger picture. Japan tends to be very socialistic, but I think they should be a little bit more, it is, it should be a capitalistic society. It's supposed to be,
somewhat,
but it's not.
It's what it is. It's competitive communism, basically.
Yeah, something like that.
Socialism, right?
Because they complain about kaku-sa, which is the difference between the rich and poor, but we don't have enough, and that's the reason why, is because of the tax thing, the curve starts for personal income tax very, very low, and it goes very steep.
Real steep.
Yeah, so the more money you make, the less you keep, and whatever money you keep, you can't give to your kids because of 55% inheritance tax, right? So what is your incentive? Japan becomes, for an entrepreneur, a high risk, low return situation. In the event you take the high risk, in the event you succeed, you get a low return.
Right.
So I understand high risk, high return. I understand low risk, low return. But high risk, low return
doesn't make sense anymore.
That's not a good thing. But I've been doing that now for the last so many years, and I finally figured out, what am I doing in a high risk, low return situation? Yeah.
Just to say you got it.
Yeah. Having said that, I enjoy living in Tokyo. I mean, so what the heck,
it has a lot of positives.
Yeah, I gave up on this,
Ernie,
high risk, low return. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I want to thank you for this. I've taken a lot of your time, but I appreciate this more than you'll ever know. It's been really good. There's lots of things I'd love to be able to talk to you about, but we'll have to do that for another time.
Sure.
Now, I do have a gift for you that has nothing to do with what you talked about.
And when we do talk, because it's not business, I'll have more than 3 vodka tonics.
We can do, I think we should do that next time. I do vodka.
No,
I do vodka tonics too. That's how vodka martinis. Now look, I brought you this only because I didn't sign it or anything, but I did bring this for you. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Well, I saw it on your Facebook, and
because your older brother's in it.
Oh, okay.
And your sister-in-law. And I believe she's your first niece.
Okay. Well, that's
Lisa.
interesting.
Because I use Lisa. That's Lisa.
Oh, really?
And look at the eyes, and you'll know.
Well, she's got.
And you'll see Howard in there, and then you'll see.
Is that right?
Yeah. You'll see him at the table. And I asked them for pictures, and then I had my illustrator do his. You probably see him in there with the dog in the kitchen if you saw it already.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah. So that shows.
Well, thank you. That's very special. I appreciate that.